extraordinaire Georgina Goodman. And we're going to be talking today about Georgina's own work and also her collaboration with Alexander McQueen. So, Georgina, just to start, from the very beginning, you had a very accomplished career in fashion before you actually came to shoes. So you'd worked for the clothes show, ID, Elle magazine. And what was the catalyst that made you decide that you wanted to be a shoe designer?
I think looking at other people who are creative, and then actually I really wanted to do it myself. So, and the only way to do that is to buckle down and go back to college and learn how to do it. So shoes were always something I was really passionate about. And we're lucky enough to have Cordwainers as college, which is arguably the best college in the world. And yes, I just went back to do my BA, and then I went to do my MA at the Royal College.
And was it difficult sort of transitioning from the world of work and fashion, where you sort of plugged into everything, and then suddenly you were back in the classroom?
Not difficult at all. Because I think I finally found something that I was really good at. I know that sounds a bit big-headed, but actually I hadn't ever been the best at anything. And I was getting really good marks at college, and I think it's because I was a mature student, and it was like, I was a real swot and did my homework and treated college like work, and it was fantastic. I loved it.
And was it then a natural progression to go from Cordwainers on to the RCA? Did you sort of see that as a goal, or was that something as you went along you thought?
I hadn't ever thought about doing that, but then when I did my final collection, my external examiner was Wendy Dagworthy, and Wendy said, "We need you on the course. We'd love you on the course." And I was like, I'm being offered a place on the course, and a dream come true. And so I couldn't really say no to that. So I, having gone from thinking I'll just go to college for 3 years, I was in education for 5 years as a mature student. I mean, I remember my first day at the canteen at the RCA, and the staff went, "Staff or student?" Student.
But was that a very different setup, really, to Cordwainers? Was it more scope for creativity when you were there?
Yeah, I mean, it's totally 100% creativity every day, and it's you're self-directed as an MA student. I think that really has to be like work, because it's an expensive thing to do. You have to be really committed.
And you were incredibly experimental with your pair of shoes from your RCA collection. And I remember at the time everybody was talking about this. It was really amazing. You were using natural leather, and that was something that...
they don't look very experimental now, do they? But at the time it really was. I don't think because of the shape. It wasn't about the innovation of the shape, but it was more to do with the pattern cutting and the way that I was making shoes. Because a lot of people have talked today about wet moulding and that being a shoe-making technique. In fact, I don't think wet moulding was necessarily a shoe-making technique. It was more of a leather technique used in orthopedic footwear for the inserts, and also for saddlery, and historically it's been used for making objects like buckets or armour, but not necessarily footwear, wet moulding like this.
So can you talk us through this? I mean, also the painting. I mean, that is became very associated with you, sort of just painting.
Yes, I still do that now as well. I just think, if it moves, put a black stripe on it. I just love... People here who work with me know that I just like everything looks better with a black stripe, especially natural leather, because it's completely natural. It's got it's called vegetable tan because it hasn't had so much of a chemical process. And when you paint it, the mark, it's like painting your skin. And so there's something, and it's completely permanent. You can't go, I've done it wrong, I'm just going to, no, you've done it now. That's the mark. It's exciting, painting a completely beautiful canvas of leather. There's no mistakes.
And also, I just want to highlight the stitching as well, which again at the time was just it looked so new and unusual and strange to see that.
Yellow stitching. I think I think I might have kind of stolen that a bit from Hermes. It's traditional saddlery. I got the stitch, tracked down this special type of thread that I still use from this one particular saddlery place where you buy all things to make saddles with, and you can get white stitching, red stitching, yellow stitching, black stitching, finish. Now you can get other colours, but those were the traditional colours. For when I was at Cordwainers, there were the saddlery students that were a very strange bunch, all wore feral jumpers, and they were like a real law unto themselves, and they didn't talk to us. They didn't talk to the fashion students, but I was really fascinated with them, and I was always going to talk to them, trying to make friends with the saddlery students. And in the end, I made friends with them. And you go into the saddlery room, and there was stuff going on there that's extraordinary. It's really amazing. And just to borrow any of those special little techniques, and that's what I did. I think that's real collaboration. It's about getting to know people, getting to understand people, and working out how you can work together. And whether it's borrowing a technique or just having a conversation, that can be collaborative. And I think in any kind of college, there's opportunity for you to go and speak to your classmate or someone else in a different department, and that's really exciting. That's actually the most exciting thing about the Royal College. Because if I didn't know how to do something, there would be... if you don't know how to do something, you have to go out and find someone who can help you or learn how to do it yourself. And I think with the techniques I was using for the footwear, I would ask the technician there, and he didn't know because he was a bespoke shoemaker, and he goes, I don't know, but maybe we could try this. And we worked out together some of the techniques, and the techniques now are used quite... A lot of the other students in the college will now use those techniques because we learnt them together, me and the technicians worked them out together. So I think that's exciting as well, when you can help move an aesthetic on.
No, absolutely. And I think we've got another pair here. And I think these are so fascinating in terms of the conversation around the nude shoe today, which has become a sort of slightly pink patent leather plastic thing that bears no relation to the natural skin and natural body.
The thing about this shoe is it's all made from one piece of leather. So it's the pattern cutting. So when you lie that flat, it looks like a little animal. It's amazing. And then it's how you construct it back together. And also, it's so lovely. It's like a beautiful object to hold and touch because it's really smooth and the way that the leather pattern
and very light, I imagine.
It's really uncomfortable because the leather is really hard because I've used a bone folder to make it so beautiful and shiny. And so when I left college, I had to work out how actually to make shoes that you could actually wear. There was none of that at college. It was all about what do they look like and how gorgeous are they.
And so you went on then to establish your own label. I mean, was that something you thought, rather than working in-house somewhere, that you wanted to?
Well, I sort of thought, I'd really love to start my own label, but there wasn't that happening at the time.
There were, and today it's quite different. There's a lot of young London shoe designers.
No, everyone wants to start their own label. I mean, I was in a conference, a footwear and accessories student conference, and actually I'd say sort of 30% of the students, I want to start my own label. And that wasn't how it was when I was at college. No. So but I was older, and I thought, well, and I'd worked, and I had different connections, and I thought, well, maybe I could. But then at the same time as my final year, I was also giving birth to my daughter. And so that was a bit of a creative achievement to finish the RCA and give birth to my daughter Silva. And I got called to an interview in Paris. I wasn't feeling very glamorous. I don't know if anyone's got kids here, but I was fully breastfeeding and going to Paris for an interview with this chest, And as soon as you get into any kind of fashion office, no one's got a chest, let alone any body weight anywhere. And I was so sort of sweaty and kind of feeling very unglamorous. I went into this meeting and I couldn't remember anything. And I remember someone saying to me, "Do you even know who John Galliano is?" You know, and I was like, "Oh God, yes, of course I know who John Galliano is," because I was in an interview for Dior, and then with Delphine Arnault, who of course is a very, very important fashion person, and but I was completely not in the right headspace. Mm-hmm. And anyway, so I went home and I was in tears, thinking, "Oh, I don't care. I definitely don't want to work here, and I need to go and breast pump right now." And so I booked myself into a hotel, and not for anything like that, but in tears, rang up the headhunter, breast pump here, and the headhunter goes, "Oh, they loved you." I'm like, "What? That is ridiculous. I mean, this woman was so mean to me," and she wasn't. I was just being sensitive, which you can't really be in the fashion business. So I remember going home and saying to my husband, "They really want me and they've offered me the job, but I don't understand because I just thought it went really badly and I just don't think I can get a job." He goes, "Don't worry, we'll just set up a business. It can't be. How difficult can it be?" And he goes, "Let's do it together." So we took a lease on a shop. We remortgaged our house. We took a lease on a shop, thinking, how difficult can this be? And I started making these shoes. I'd never made any shoes that you can actually wear before. Mm-hmm. And then very quickly we discovered that it was really difficult, and you've got to pay rent, and you know. So we did it. Every day was difficult, but we did start to then make ready-to-wear shoes.
Because you were sort of ahead of the game as regards Mayfair, because in 2002 you set up your shop in Shepherd Market.
It was an affordable red light district within sort of easy spitting distance of Bond Street. Yeah, but it was quite skanky. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but now still is in parts. Well, in between the Ivy Club, and it is.
Yeah. But these are some of your ready-to-wear shoes.
Yeah.
And I love the Made in Love is your logo. And can you tell us how that?
Well, my husband is a marketing expert, or I don't know how you would describe what he does in his. I don't really know what he does in his real life, but he does other things apart from working with me. But he's tirelessly supported my creative journey, and he's come up with some good ideas, and one of them is the Made in Love, and he said that really it's not part of our logo, it's actually part of our rationale. So it's our emotional geography. So if a shoe is made in Italy or made in, that's the rational geography, but our emotional geography was always that it was made in love. And then we used to use the heart quite often, and then the heart became a very kind of commercially used emblem. So we stopped using the heart and just used the Made in Love, and we still use it.
Yeah, and I love the shoes here that actually have it spelt out.
Oh yeah,
which is quite fun. And of course, the construction and engineering in your shoes is really interesting. I think it's not just another season of sort of different fabrics.
I'd say the heels and stuff like that. But I think any commercial shoes that have to, I say commercial, these are £500-600. Is that commercial? Yes, apparently it is. That's commercial luxury. Can't be that really can't have that much innovation, because how is the factory going to make it? So it can go to a certain point.
Yeah.
But I think only in kind of couture and things that for a catwalk can you really be, can you really use sort of expensive innovation. So they are commercial. They have got design innovation. But,
yeah, I mean, I always think your heels are always really interesting in shoes, and also the platform, the way you sort of worked with that when that sort of started reappearing again, the way you sort of.
Pebble was a bit of a mistake because I stepped on something on the beach, and BJ took a picture, and he always says, I designed that shoe. But he quite often says, oh, well, that was my idea, wasn't it? So.
Well, I'm just going to, I think we have a nice example of one of your actual experimental, is the heart there. So the glass shoe, I thought it would be sort of nice, we can talk about this and then move on to collaboration. So how did this come about?
I can never remember dates, but like, let's say 2.5, 3 years ago, my business, I lost my name, and my former business partners took my name. And so I found myself in a position, like many designers, who go into who go into partnership with the wrong people.
Yeah.
I don't know that at the time because there's no wrong decisions really. You know, they weren't the right people for me to be in business with, and I lost my name. So I was a designer with no name, and so I thought, well, I can't make shoes anymore, or at the moment because I don't own my name. So I decided that I wanted to make some shoes that you couldn't wear, obsessed, as most shoe designers would be, of the Cinderella story, I started to investigate different endings or different versions of the Cinderella story, and this is just one of the experiments that I did. And I worked with a glass artist, and I went to see him and I said, I want to make these glass shoes, and he said, oh, you want to make objects? I said, well, yes, but I want to be able to put my feet inside them. And then he pondered hard on it, and that's going to be really hard, it's going to be really difficult. The only way to do it is to do lost wax, which is an old technique used by Lalique and in bronze sculpture it's used, etc. But in glass it's quite a specialist thing. And so I went about this very expensive, this is the most expensive pair of shoes I've ever bought myself, a very expensive project that you can now see it on the shoes of a part of a Nick Knight film, and the finished shoes are on tour for a few years. I think they were in the Brooklyn Museum in a shoe exhibition, and now they've gone on tour around America. So I won't see them for a while.
They're incredible, and the fact that they're actually made of glass, not perspex.
No glass.
Yeah,
lead crystal.
Well, that's. I think you can see them there being worn, which is from the show studio.
Yeah, don't stand up in them though. Don't actually walk in them, you know.
So, sort of moving on from, I think this shows really, your way of working and the fact that you're not afraid to push things, and I think that brings us nicely to Alexander McQueen, your relationship with Lee McQueen, and how did you first meet?
Well, what happened was I was working in my business, and I think that anyone will know who runs their own business that especially a fashion business, you need to work as well as have a business. A business is like an expensive child at boarding school. And so in order to pay those fees, I needed to also do other work. So I started doing other consultancies. And at the time, Lee was looking for a new shoe designer. And I think, and it was actually Katie who said, no, I tell a lie. It was actually the Gucci headhunter, recruiter, sort of was a friend of a friend, and she came into my showroom, and she said, I know McQueen are looking for a shoe designer. And I said, well, I can't take a full-time job. I could do it as a consultancy. And they were like, oh no, we don't want a consultant. We want someone who can be there all the time. Lee needs someone in the office all the time. And anyway, I went to meet Lee, and I didn't have a portfolio. I only had my college portfolio because I hadn't been for an interview, apart from that awful breast pump one, you know. That's the last one I've been to, never again. And I remember, and I say this to my students now because I teach BA and MA students, and I always say, you never know when you might need to get a pencil out and start drawing in an interview or in a meeting. So really make sure, if you're a designer, that you can actually draw. You know, Lee was like, can you draw? And I was like, well, yeah, of course. And I started drawing, and I did 6 drawings. I remember in front of it, terrifying, 6 drawings, and then it was a great meeting. It was just like, it was just a bit of banter, you know, and it was a chemistry meeting really. Yeah. And then afterwards, I discussed with Katie about how I could work and how much time I could give, and then then I just started working there, not really knowing what I was letting myself in for, because I was running my own business, and then I was literally taking on a full-time job, consultancy. No, it was. Yeah. I was there a lot.
And so you were physically in their space working?
No, I wasn't supposed to be, but it worked out that I was, because I'd have to. There was no contractual agreement for me to be in there like 2 or 3 days a week. Yeah. I was there. I was contracted to design commercial collection and also to work on the show. And anyone who's worked in any design studio will know that you have to be there when the ideas are flowing. So fitting times, I'd always be there, because, you know, that's when I might sit and draw, and while Lee was fitting and I'd draw at the same time, the process had to be right in the moment. And so if he was there, I would try and be in. Yeah. But we wouldn't always know when he was coming in. So there'd be quite a lot of, he's in, texts.
Go!
Flat shoes across London.
And so how did the process work when there was a collection coming up? Was there a sort of meeting, or did you work particularly with one person on the team?
I worked a lot with Sarah. Yeah. And Katie for the first season. But then I worked with Sarah a lot. We have very, very close working relationship, and also, you know, with everyone in the design team, because, you know, if there was print would be incorporated or embroidery would be incorporated, and so you would have to work across. We would all work with each other.
I mean, it's really interesting from the accessories point of view, because I think we spoke briefly about Philip, and everybody knows about Philip's work, but he was a very different way of working. He was off-site, he went away and did it, but your pieces are more sort of integral in a way to the actual garments and the finishes.
Yeah, so Lee would come and he'd have a very we could stories, haven't we? Yeah. And these are some of the shoes that I worked on. But he would have a very strong view of. He might do an initial drawing, or he might do he goes, I think I'm seeing a pointed foot or something. He might say something like that, and then he might give me 3 references, or a Polaroid of something, you know, and the Polaroid might be a plastic bag wrapped around a foot or something like that. I mean, it could be and then it would be, I want something like this. And I go, okay. So I'd take that, and then I'd use my special third eye to get inside his head, and draw about 1,000 drawings. No, it was a lot though. I mean, I would draw a lot, and then do my own research and bring things to the. Then there might be a meeting where we would sit across from each other, and I go, what about this? And he'd go, and then he'd take the drawing, and then he'd go, no, what about that? And then he'd get a big black pen, and he'd go, no, what about that? And I go, but that's my really nice drawing, but that's okay. And then there'd be, you know, so we'd have a conversation like that. Meanwhile, over on my assistant's table, there'd be eagle ears, everyone listening. Yes, he definitely said red leather. They'd be scrabbling around for red leather. Yes, he said pointed heels, and there'd be a lot of that going on. So boards would be made in real time. Wow. And then, you know, what about this? You know, so there'd be a lot, everyone would be reactive.
Yeah.
Because this word genius, which is bandied around, it's genius to get everyone to do that around you. I mean, that's genius, surely. Come on, everyone. I mean, that's genius.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I really did feel like proper genius next to me, you know, really.
Yeah.
With the scissor hands, and you know, if anyone who's, I justify anyone to say that's not genius.
Yeah, I mean, we have a little. We're going backwards chronologically with the shoes, and I think it would be great to sort of zone in on, of course,
on certain ones.
Yes, the Armadillo shoe from Plato's Atlantis, Spring Summer 2010, and I think
so that came about. Lee knew that he wanted the girls. First of all, he wanted the girls not to have heels. Okay, I was like, come on, give me something. You know, got to have a heel. So he wanted the girls to be looking like they were on tiptoes. But like point shoes. I was like, okay, that's going to be really hard to. Well, you know, it's going to be really hard, but let's see what we can do. And then I started to work with a technician, and we banded around ideas backwards and forwards. And I've done a lot of work. I can make shoes, you know, so I've got a lot of I've got background of making. So that was really handy because I was quite often able to say, if the last maker said, "Oh, no, Georgina, you can't do this," I go, "Yeah, you can actually," and I'd get on the machine and do it. So I think that's really handy to be able to know. So if someone says, "No, you can't do that," I've always said, "Yeah, you can," and worked out a way.
And was this in Italy?
In Italy. So actually, for this shoe, we also made some prototype. We did some prototyping in the studio as well. There'd always be a little bit of prototyping going on in London and backwards and forwards. With a team of amazing kind of students and different people working, everyone putting their creative mind onto it. But with this particular shoe, because it was really high, B, it was the way that he wanted the that sort of balance of almost looking like the girls were going to fall over. It was quite technically difficult for you not to fall over in them, actually.
And it was a high glass surface, which I can imagine just added to that for the models. But it looked so beautiful, and it sort of worked perfectly at the end. And I think you had a lovely quote from Lee at the end of the show where he sort of...
Oh, yeah, because Lee would often say something like, "It's not all about the shoes, George," you know, or something like that. And then in this show, he said to me, "Oh, God, that really was all about the shoes, wasn't it?" I mean, it really wasn't, but because it was all about everything.
But I think
that was a nice thing.
In the sort of general popular culture, that show is remembered for the shoes. The shoes became some phenomenon outside of fashion.
I think it was the silhouette, because when you see that silhouette, and then the shoes had to look like they were growing out of the model. Yeah, I mean, they were extraordinary. They were extraordinary because when the girls first put them on, I remember there was people going white, like literally going, "Oh, I can't walk in these," you know, like you had to get the really, really experienced girls to take the first steps. And, I don't think I could walk in them. No. But I'm not a model, so it's not my job. I'm not paid that much.
We've got some images here from the Horn of Plenty show. And there was a lot of references to previous shows in this collection. But an amazing range of footwear, and I think there's...
I mean, you'd like to have a different shoe with every single outfit.
I
didn't know I was working on a couture show, but that was always quite hard with... because, say, for instance, there was the budget for shoes. Yeah. You know, I wasn't in budget normally because there'd be, for instance, we didn't know exactly which model was going to wear that outfit, and that outfit had to have that clown had to wear that red and black boot. So I'd have to make that in 3 sizes.
Wow.
That stretch boot that came up to here that cost, a lot of money each. So there was
really
a lot of you've gone over budget, George, conversation.
It's challenging, I can imagine. I mean, especially with something like these Chopins. I mean, they must be incredibly difficult to construct.
They were, because that was pre 3D print.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a lovely little man in somewhere in Italy. I can't remember where it was now, but we had to drive a really long way through really pouring rain. I remember me and the technician, we were in his car, and we had to go and get the wooden units that this one guy had agreed to make. Wow. And we needed 20. I can't remember. We needed 25 pairs or something. And I remember he could make 4 at a time, and then we'd have to go and get those 4 hours away, drive them back. There's a lot of driving involved in shoe making, and then drive them back to the factory, and then there's the coordinating and getting everything ready for the show, because everything happens very much in the last minute.
Mm-hmm. And embellishment, I think, for instance, those feathers and the crystals and things, is that something that's like...
Feather shoes are doddle. Absolute doddle. Because all you've got to do is make it in suede and send it off to the person who sticks the feathers on it or who sews the feathers on it. They were my dream. How many feather shoes can we have? We only need 2. Because they were... I didn't have to... Someone else did those.
They look incredible. And this is really interesting here. These shoes, the toe shoes, which I think I'm going to skip forward to just see the process here, because these are so beautiful. And these were made actually in your studio, is that?
We made those in, my assistant Kelly made those. They were made using the moulding technique that Lee loved. And, but by that time I had perfected a way of making them not so hard that you didn't break your toes when you wore them. So...
And they do, I mean, they recall, there's a Magritte painting, I think it was a pair of boots that turns into toes, and there's sort of surreal
There's a lot of surreal references for those. And of course, they're an homage to the Westwood ones.
Yes.
They are actually, that's... we would use a lot of references. I think that was a big love.
Yeah. But also your stitching, I see, is very much a feature.
But it's white this time, not yellow.
But that, actually, just going back to that collection, because the toe shoes weren't the only shoes in there, those Swarovski crystal boots are incredible. And those heels, they're resin, is that right, or plastic?
Yeah.
But they look like they are crystal.
Oh, that was the worst moment, because I remember in the run-through, the worst thing that can ever happen is a heel falling off in a fashion show, isn't it? So those were just the bane of my life. And I remember there was a situation, there was meltdown central. All the girls who had those resin heels on, 3 broke or something like that in the run-through. And I remember Lee coming up to me going, "Oh, the shoe's going to break in the show." And I said, "I don't know." So all I had was a very, very, very hot, sweaty assistant. And there was 2 or 3 other people came up to me, "What should we do? What should we do?" I think somebody had we had one tube of super glue here and something, and we didn't know what was going to work. All we had was super glue. And so we just glued them on, and someone said, "Do you think it's going to be okay?" I said, "It's going to be fine." It's just going to be fine. Stop panicking. And I just remember shaking the whole way through that show.
Gosh. But I think that's a recurring theme with a lot of his shows.
Well, no, thinking about it now makes me feel a bit...
This idea of just pushing it and just seeing, fingers crossed that it's all going to work, and it always
I don't like that, though. because that was the only time when the heel's ever fallen off. And I remember there was another situation where Lee came up to me and goes, "Are they going to be okay?" No, it was the Plato's Atlantis when he said, "Are they going to be all right? Are they going to be all right? Are they going to work?" I said, "Have I ever let you down?" And I was thinking, oh, God, how it's going to be this time, isn't it? But it wasn't.
So here we have a girl who lived in a tree, and I think somebody touched on this earlier, the fact that there were
Flats on the catwalk.
Yeah, and that the first time that he had ever...
I remember when he told me that he wanted... he'd been on his big trip to India, and it was really amazing. It was really serene, joss sticks going in the studio, and it was like a really nice atmosphere at the beginning of the collection. And I remember him going, I think I'm going to have flats on the cat. I think I'm going to do flats. I said, flats on the cats? And he was like, and it was so sort of outrageous that we could barely even believe it. Thinking, oh, that'd be easy then. We just got flat shoes. That's going to be a really easy season. It was really hard because he wanted every single shoe embroidered and every single shoe different.
And would you send them away to get embroidered?
But all the artwork and everything was done in-house. And I mean, I didn't do the artwork for embroidery. That was
the embroidery team.
Yeah, well, I had a team of assistants as well, and they would have to do the embroideries for the shoes. So they weren't necessarily embroidery experts, but we had to adopt the same techniques as the embroidery people and then put them onto the shoe patterns. So. And obviously everything had to match with whatever embroideries they were going with.
And there were also heels, of course.
There were heels as well.
And I see that triple tongue, is that another sort of Westwood reference, or is that just a more historic kind of...
Historic, men's shoes.
Yeah, it's beautiful, really. So here we are. The real deal. You're wearing the objects on your feet, which is fantastic. So this again, these are incredible. You can see the chopines here. Is that the first time that you did those, that style?
I think that was the first time. Yeah, but obviously Lee's done Chopins many times. That's a recurring theme for him. But that was sort of, I think, a sexy Chopin. I think a sexier one. And what was interesting about this was that the shoes that we had on the catwalk were the very shoes that went into the commercial selling, which doesn't often happen. So we had such a successful selling campaign as well with these shoes, which I think is quite interesting. That if you can get something on the catwalk that is commercial, it can really affect your sales as well. So
and it's just interesting again what we were saying earlier about accessories. Actually, apart from hats and jewellery on the catwalk, the shoes are the things that McQueen sell. They don't sell hats as such.
No, they don't sell hats, or necessarily the jewellery, the showpiece jewellery. But I think that following something like the Plato's Atlantis, they discovered that actually they could sell those showpieces as objects.
Yeah.
And I think that's an interesting concept to sell shoes as objects.
Yeah.
But no, I know what you're saying. That as a shoe consultant, I wasn't really necessarily seen as a collaborator in the way that someone who did jewellery or millinery would be, because McQueen had a commercial collection of shoes, which I also worked on.
Yeah.
So I think so. It was almost like doing two collections. I did the show collection and then the commercial, and also the pre-collection, which is where we would get a lot of sales. And
we also, I think, touched earlier on talking about the shapes of the shoes and how that would differ. It's not your last or your shape going in, and that idea that you have to sort of put your ego away.
I think being a shoe designer anyway has to be. If I'm working on my own collection, I can. It's about what is my point of view. But I think what's really exciting for me about working with anyone else, you know, a clothing designer, is that it's an egoless situation, and it's about their collection and what looks good with their clothes. And I think that's actually a really nice thing to be able to get into someone else's head, and you don't have to bring your own point of view. But you're sort of sharing your creativity and tapping into someone else's, and it's really infectious. It's really nice. But it is egoless. I mean, I would spend most of the time with Lee either sort of sitting there drawing or on my knees, tying up shoes, especially in fittings. I wouldn't really get off my knees.
Okay. Collection. I think that was the last collection that he did with Katie England.
Yeah.
And so was this the first one that you collaborated on?
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. The first time I did a McQueen show, I was just thinking, I could barely breathe. It was so stressful. And I remember going, "Is this what it's always like?" And someone just patting my back, like, "Yeah, you'll get used to it." I was like, well, I am never doing that again. But I did.
Well, I think we're going to take a closer look at some of the special projects, and we've had a look at these, which are amazing. The angel shoes, which were from his last collection, which was shown a few weeks after his death. And how did these come about? Was he very involved in this idea that he wanted the
he absolutely
figures?
knew that he wanted angels over everything, and you know, he had you know, just he didn't know what he wanted the shoes to look like, but he just said he wanted I wanted an angel to be the heel, because I'd done a heel with him before, which was we called it the lady heel, which was a sort of lalique lady that we've got this girl to carve, and so he just that's what he said, that he wanted the shoe to have an angel holding up the heel. So then there'd be a process of finding the right angel from different photos. There was a lot of we went taking pictures in graveyards, which is a bit strange now, looking back now, to think that you know, our research was going into graveyards. And so that was carved by an amazing guy who also worked with the Chapman brothers, and he carved that. And then we took it to Italy and 3D printed.
And that's really interesting how 3D printing, this technology sort of changes quite a lot, really, what you were able to do.
Yeah, I mean, the first time I'd used it a little bit before the Atlantis show, but that was the show that we really... I remember Lee saying, no, I don't want to use that machine. I don't know what it is. You can mould it. You can mould that. And I was like, but we can get all this detail. And I'd been to see this guy in Italy, and he just bought this machine, and it was like, I remember going, when I was a little girl, going to see my dad's computer, where there was like a whole room and with big discs like that, and it was a bit like that. All the Italians were smoking and showing me their machine, and it was similar to seeing the first computer, and then they turned it on, and it was made a really loud like this. So I went back to Lee and I said, "There's this machine," and it goes and he goes, "And what can it do?" I said, "It can do anything. You can." And then I showed pictures of what it could do, and so from that point on, we called the machine the machine. So anytime we thought we might want to do 3D, we go and then.
But it must be really hard.
Technical.
Yeah. But I'm thinking of the uppers, how you connect them together. Is that as difficult with the 3D resin? Here you've got some beautiful embroidered.
No, because each that was nothing to do really with the uppers, because the shoe was integral to the outfit. So it wasn't.
Yeah, it's separate.
It was not separate, but it was like there was the bottom, which was the angel holding up your foot, and then there was the shoe, the upper, if you like, the the embroidery that went into the outfit became part of the outfit.
And presumably sort of designed by the same, did you use design embroidery from the dress?
Yes, I did. I mean, I don't do embroidery. I don't design embroideries. These were all, they were there, you know, they were part of the dress. And so we'd work out very carefully which shoe was, which embroidery, you know, so this dress is going to have this shoe, and then we'd know we could launch 2 of those size-wise, because it's very expensive. You can imagine 3D printing and then embroidery for each one. It was an expensive process.
From the same collection, the Grinling Gibbons shoes, which you're about to see somewhere. There we go. So these are incredibly beautiful. 17th century designer, carver, Grinling Gibbons. You can come and see the original in the V&A. But this was again something that he sort of was very keen to.
He loved Grinling Gibbons. Loved. I've got to say that I'd always seen those carvings, and I'd not really known. Lee taught me a lot about historical references and things. And if it wasn't for Lee, I wouldn't really know who that was, or it wouldn't be embedded in my psyche. But I became very kind of aware that I absolutely knew what it was, because I have a friend who's got a big house, and she's in there. They've actually got this doorway, which is all carved, a Grinling Gibbons carving, and I thought, oh God, I'm so stupid. So anyway, I said, can I come and have a look at your carving? And I mean, that was his vision. That he knew what he wanted. He wanted a shoe that had that on it. He didn't know what the shoe was going to be like. So my assistant actually sort of pulled lots of different pieces together on the computer, and I think that's kind of be really useful to use the computer in that way for the design. I love drawing with a pencil, but sometimes the computer's a really nice way of illustrating. But I draw a lot.
Well, this is really interesting here, actually. This reference from the boots and how it transforms into the shoe.
Okay, so here, this boot on the left. At one time, everything in the show was this chunky heel, and then it was all like, no, I've had this. No, I want this heel now. And it was like, all changed. So instead of redrawing everything, I just literally had to chop the chunky heel off and put the new heel on. So I didn't redraw the uppers, because there was quite a lot of that changing. You do a development, and then you'd have a new idea.
And how close to the actual show were these changes?
Oh, sometimes quite close. But with the Grinling Gibbons, it was like he said, go off and develop that, and there was money that had already been spent on it, and I think he wanted that anyway, and I worked with the carver and the 3D printers, and so that was in motion. So
yeah, I'm conscious of time here, but I really want to talk about this because this is incredible. Again, Plautus Atlantis, the alien shoe.
What I think is amazing is that this is a drawing on the left, and this is the artist made that from my drawing. Don't you think that's amazing?
Yes.
That somebody can, that's not 3D printed, that's somebody with their hands carving. I think that's amazing.
It's incredible. And how long did that take, that process?
Well, luckily, that was someone who works in England, so he wasn't on holiday in August. So I was on holiday, and someone was carving that when I was on holiday.
And so it was literally the film Alien that this reference came from?
Yes.
So you sort of just watched the film?
No, I mean, Lee said, have you seen, gave me that book and said, go and have a look. See, I want shoes that are like the Alien. And I said, and I drew like all these things, and then I brought them back, and he goes, they're not very dark. And they were a bit too nicey, a bit organic-y, Because I think he says like, I want them more. I can't remember, he used some reference, you know. And he goes, have you got a dark side? And I said, yeah. He goes, you should go home and watch some porn and like, you know, really find your dark side. And I was like, okay. and so, you know, that's what I did, of course. No. And so I did. I went and drew, went back to my studio, and I just like, that is amazing. I can see what he means. And I've got this book of drawings of the alien shoe. And then I went back and I said, what about this? He goes, oh, someone's been busy. And we looked. He goes, yeah, I like that one. I like that one. And then he takes some elements. He goes, that heel, but I want like a twisted heel, and the bottom here, the bottom of the shoe is quite penisy, which is very unlike me, you know. But yeah, so he did help me access my dark side, which was great.
Well, that I mean,
in a good way.
Yeah,
you know?
And I think that's another question that I wanted to ask. Working with him, how do you feel as a designer?
Oh
did
God,
it push
amazing!
You?
Yeah. I'd never design a shoe like that. You know, like that's what I mean about, you know, you something inside is brought out by someone like him, because he's asking you to do something that you'll go somewhere that you wouldn't necessarily go, and that was scary, exciting, you know. Dangerous, amazing, and all those, and that's what happens. I mean, that's when you push yourself creatively.
Well, I think we might just go back and have a look at the finished shoe, and then maybe open up to some questions. Oh, sorry, we've gone over. Sorry, sorry about that, everyone. But Georgina, thank you so much. It's been fantastic talking to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you, Georgina. That was absolutely amazing and incredibly difficult to follow, and incredibly difficult in some respects to sum up. An extraordinary couple of days, and I've been sort of thinking in the last couple of hours, when I knew that Claire was too unwell to stay, how do I actually pull back together from all the conversations we've had in the last 6 months to where we've got to? And really, I think the 2 days have been divided into 4 different sections. And the first that Georgina beautifully illustrates is the relationship and the intense, passionate relationship between McQueen and his collaborators, whether you call yourself collaborators or consultants. That ability, the ambition that he instilled in so many people like Georgina and Laura and Case and Simon and Sam and Susanna and Anne and Sarah, taking people to a completely different level. And there must have been an extraordinary sense of belief that was a two-way process. And I was trying to think about how this worked, and the sort of this relationship between endurance and risk. It just seems to be a very positive process in the end. That's something that could be dangerous, a little bit thrill-seeking, but that sense of a team jumping off together, and I am sort of taken back to these ideas of Lee the clubber and this sort of sense of a group of people like, yeah, why not? Let's do it. And that sense that if everybody else is doing it, what you can't not join that merry-go-round. and that a sort of huge sense of support coming in different ways, that there's been constant mentioning of sort of holding people's hand and reassurance and, you can do it, that's kind of been reciprocated, a reciprocal relationship around that. So I think that's absolutely wonderful. The second group of our presentations have all been about giving perspective. And yesterday we had Catherine talking beautifully about the Gothic, Chris talking about tailoring and bringing in an element of queerness, which has kind of crept in at different times. Tim talking about construction, which was sort of beautifully echoed in Sarah Burton's talk about the circle and the Edward Scissorhand cutting. And wonderful presentation earlier from Jane about mannequins and dismembered bodies and reconfigurations and all those sort of historical diagrams and models that we saw in Simon Costin's drawings, that to a certain extent are lots of the things that Case made, they have that relationship with that. So those have been incredibly rich in sort of building on how this sort of ripple effect that he had in finding passion in others and finding connection. And I think that's a sort of little point where rather self-indulgently I've spent a lot of time thinking about some of the early shows, and I thought about this show that happened in 1995 at Tate, curated by Stuart Morgan, and we've got a Jana Sternbach dress, 2 Robert Gober pieces, this is a Mirasol Barker, there's a man called Hammett Butts who was sort of very much on the gay scene, who made these incredible pieces that were filled with gases that if you had... I was thinking about Erin O'Connor's glass shimmering dress, and that these were, if you actually pulled them apart and smashed them together, you would have blown up the Tate. And these Pepe's cages, which reminded me of Simon's cages with the crows in them from the Eclect Dissect. And even Joseph Boyce's pieces with the wolf, that I was thinking of Laura dancing with wolves and actually standing up and saying, no, you're going to have to saw the feet off. I'm not going on with 2 wolves in heels, whereas Joseph Boyce wrapped himself up in a blanket. So I'm not saying... I think it is very possible that this was, definitely a show that people were talking about, and maybe some of the people who were working with him also saw it. And I was also mindful with, the beautiful presentation that we had from Kate, and it was wonderful to hear Kate talking about her intense relationship and the enormous amount of work that she's put into this show. But I was mindful of 2, again, in that period from 95 to 2005, of one show that was at Tate of Rebecca Horn's work and another show at the Hayward, which I think was sort of incredibly resonant for a lot of people at that time. And I think the associations are very obvious. And then a third person that came to mind in many, many ways, in that sense that we've talked about in terms of transformation in dance, in film, in photography, and the sense that that's what fashion is about, is to continually transform and transform. And I think the work of Cindy Sherman, again, very much in that period, and thinking of Janice Miller's paper about makeup and the Freudian relationships with it, and that sort of touch and go with Lee Burry and others. But I think, again, it speaks for itself. And then, we talked about film yesterday, and it's crept in today, and sort of from the past, I've kept thinking about Kevin Spacey in Seven and Silence of the Lambs, but also this image of Kes and that sense of that was talked about in Lee McQueen's relationship to birds, and that sense of freedom and a sort of an urban, working class young man kind of looking for an outlet, and an outlet that had this sort of urban sense to it. But I think the story of Kes is very resonant, and somehow Natalie Portman in Swan and the Black Swan and Birdman, sort of after, the way in which film seems to have actually borrowed from McQueen. So then I come to these are just things that were floating in the back of my head. So our third group it was really wonderful, as Ben said, to hear from the students, and I think they all gave, incredibly rich presentations, and well done to them. And it's been great to work with London College of Fashion and colleagues from Central St Martin's. Caroline Evans, I think, gave a really wonderful sort of establishing paper this morning and did a wonderful job chairing. And I've mentioned Janice and Alistair. And then I sort of touched on it, but I think our fourth session is that I think during this project, Team McQueen and Team McQueen Conference, that we have magpie-like mined the treasures of the V&A. So wonderful presentations from Kate and Jane and Keith. Oriel and Susanna gave wonderful in-conversations, and Bill and Lisa establishing papers. So I think it's wonderful that we have this sort of in-house resource to draw on all those intelligences and knowledge. So I think it's been very good. And thank you for being a really good audience. Thank you. Oh, sorry, that was my one. I did think there was today there was the fashion theory bit, but the other thing that came to mind as being incredibly important was a catalogue from a show in New York in 1992 by Jeffrey Deek. And this is sort of the premise for the show, but I think it resonates, and it's maybe something to walk out the door with. What we do know is that we will soon be forced by technological advances to develop a new morality. We will need to build a new moral structure that will give people a framework of how to deal with the enormous choices they will have to make in terms of genetic alteration and computerized brain enhancement. We will have to face decisions not only about what looks good, but what is good or is bad, about the restructuring of the mind and body. The limits of life will no longer be something that can be taken for granted. We will have to create a new moral vision to cope with them. In the future, artists may no longer be involved in just redefining art. In the post-human future, artists may also be involved in redefining life. Thank you.